A hush fell over the arena as Rebecca walked to the balance beam. She was the last to compete, and her performance would decide the championship. Rebecca knew it, too, and suddenly, that icy little bubble broke. Everything came rushing in. Daddy. TJ. All the hard work. Her hands started to shake, and she couldn't seem to breathe. Monica walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. But Rebecca didn't hear her. She stared at the narrow strip of wood. It was like a bridge, and at the other end was everything she wanted. She shook off Monica's hand and took a deep breath. She could do this. She would do this. Rebecca put her hands on the beam. Don't fall. Don't fall. She sprang into a forward roll and stood up. She arched her back, pointed an elegant toe, and began her routine. It was a little wobbly at first, but with each spin, somersault, and leap, Rebecca's moves grew stronger, sure. And she was dancing, flying, as she soared into the backflip that was TJ's favorite. TJ. Oh, TJ. It all came apart then. And Rebecca, the girl who never fell, was falling. She seemed to fall forever, and when she hit the mat at last, she was all by herself. Just Rebecca, lying in a pool of brilliant light in a dark, empty place. She could no longer see or hear the crowd. Then, there on the balance beam, looking perfectly at peace, stood Monica. But this Monica didn't look at all like a coach's assistant. Her long, shimmery dress might have been spun from moonbeams. And she seemed to glow. What's happening? Asked the shocked Rebecca. I can't believe it. I don't fall. I don't. Well, you did, Rebecca. You slipped and you fell, came Monica's voice. Now stand up, Rebecca sighed. It's too late? I've lost. Monica shook her head. It's not the winning or the losing, Rebecca, and her words seemed to sing. It's the getting up that counts. Then she smiled and raised one eyebrow. Isn't that what your father always said? How did you know that? None of this made any sense to Rebecca, but the familiar words were comforting. God knows, and he told me, answered Monica, drifting down to kneel beside her. I'm an angel, Rebecca, she said. God sent me to be here with you when you fell. Rebecca was starting to get very scared. Why would an angel come when I fall? Monica smiled at her. Can you think of a better time for an angel to show up? Her eyes sparkled. People tend to see things differently when they need help. Maybe Monica was an angel. And if she was, what's going to happen to TJ? Rebecca asked anxiously. Will he be all right? I don't know if he will live, said Monica gently, but I do know he will be all right. Everyone in this world has to get up and go on every day without knowing what's going to happen. People can never be sure how long they'll have those they love. Then Monica looked at Rebecca very intently. This was important. But one thing is certain, Rebecca. No one is ever alone, because God is always there. TJ's not alone. And you won't be alone on that beam, the competition. Rebecca looked around. Where's everybody? They're here, said Monica calmly, waiting for you to get up. Even your rivals want you to get up. Because they're your friends, too. And you've got all the time in the world to decide whether or not you will. Then Monica smiled at the bewildered girl. Personally, I think you should get up. God thinks you should. And your father would think so, too. But it's your choice. This was all too much for Rebecca. My father, Monica nodded. Peter is very proud of you. Rebecca shook her head, holding back her tears. He's dead. He's in the presence of God, Rebecca. And you are, too. Monica's voice was like music. And there is something you need to hear in this special moment that God has created for you. God loves you, little one. And he gave you a good and kind father, not for a long time, but for enough time. Monica reached out and lifted Rebecca's chin, looking deep into her eyes. Time enough, she repeated, to teach you and your brother the lessons you need, not to win, but to grow. Peter taught you always to do your best, to live and play and love with all your heart and soul. Rebecca's tears overflowed. But I didn't, she sobbed. When it mattered most, I didn't. And as Monica held her in her loving arms, Rebecca poured out all the hurt. When Daddy was dying, I was afraid. And the sicker he got, the more scared I got. And the harder it was, the more I stayed away and practiced instead. I just kept putting off going to see him, until it was too late. Rebecca cried like her heart would break. I never said goodbye to Daddy, Monica. I never said goodbye. Monica held her very tight for a moment, then opened her arms and stood up. Rebecca, you don't have to say goodbye, she smiled warmly at the astonished girl. What if you just say till we meet again? What if you choose to stand up and show everyone what your father taught you? That's the best farewell you could ever give him. Rebecca sat very still in the light. Then she lifted her head, slowly wiped the tears from her face, and stood up. Suddenly, time moved again. Rebecca was back in the crowded arena, and everyone was clapping for her. Just for standing up, she thought. Well, I can do a lot better than that. Rebecca walked proudly to the beam to finish what she'd started. She'd lost her chance to win, but that didn't matter. Suddenly this was about something a lot more important than winning. Rebecca had never felt so light and free. Every move flowed into the next with grace and ease and joy. Then when she spun through her flying dismount, landing with perfect balance, the crowd jumped to its feet. But Rebecca didn't even notice the standing ovation. Her eyes were lifted to heaven. She smiled as she raised a slender arm and waved goodbye. Then, slicing through the storm of applause, came a joyful whoop from Tess, who could always be heard when she wanted to be. Jay just woke up, she sang out. Rebecca flashed a brilliant smile at Monica. And so did I, she said. Her teammates ran up and surrounded her, and she didn't mind the hugs at all. Unbelievable, said a bouncing Christy. That was awesome, Nicole beamed at her. Rebecca looked at Nicole in surprise. I could beat you next time, you know. And you're still happy for me, of course, said Nicole. Then added, with a teasing smile, some of my best friends are champions. Rebecca's answering smile was bright enough to light up the room. She threw her arms around Nicole and Kristen. My best friends are, too, MRS. Browner carefully made a mark on the garage door. Stand up straight, Rebecca. We are going to be keeping track of this for a long time. Sandra Browner and her daughter smiled as they watched TJ pull the for sale sign from the yard. Then, arms around each other, the Browner family walked into the little house. They'd come home to stay. Across town in the silent gym, 3 angels were about to go home, too. But first, Tess winked at Andrew. Okay, Miss Wings, she said to Monica, pointing to the parallel bars. Let's see what you've learned. The first thing I learned, said Monica, digging both hands into a big bowl of talc, is always chalk, up, and she swept a handful of talc into the air. Monica laughed and put her arms around them both. Together they watched as the cloud of chalk dust swirled and danced in the still air, spiraling up and up, higher and higher, until, with a sweep of shining wings, a snow-white dove soared toward heaven. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. And nothing will be impossible for you. Matthew 17:20-21. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yeah. I will help thee, yeah. I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand. NIV. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand.